Hello and welcome to another episode of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancey Street. Today is actually Saturday, May 29th, 2021, and I have to apologize. This is episode 19B, and it is going up on Saturday night instead of my usual Monday mid-morning, early afternoon. So I do apologize for this is now my second. Well, I've only missed one episode, and this is the first one that I've been behind on this far. But there was so much that I wanted to talk about this week. I didn't just want to skip it because I had some things keeping me from being able to record like usual on Friday. Maybe someday I will get into explaining all of that, but it's not for story for right now. So I did definitely want to talk about the things that came out all in this week because there is a lot of stuff plus the regular comic book poll list that I always this was the pick list this time, that I always talk about, things that I found new and interesting for this week, or good and interesting from this week's comic book poll list. So we have those things, and then we have show catch-ups for The Bad Batch, Black Lightning, and Superman and Lois, as well as the Modok TV series, which I haven't finished, but I have watched, I think, the first 9 episodes of, so it's very funny, so we'll talk about that a little bit, and the Black Lightning finale as well, before going into the news and rumors of the past week or so, which includes Secret Invasion casting news, Green Lantern HBO TV series casting news, some Sonyverse casting news, some NCU TV announcements, and then some rumors involving Spider-Man 3 and Captain America 4. So definitely stick around for all of that. But I will be starting off with the comic book pick list, just like I would on any regular B episode. So we'll go ahead and get started with that now. I do talk about the comic book poll list for quite a bit in this episode, so if you want to skip over that and get into the news and things segment, go ahead and skip to about an hour and a minute in, and about 20-ish seconds, and you will be right about there where I wrap that up. For the comic book picks, just to give you a little heads up, things that I'm going to be talking about, and I always spoil things to various extents, so be aware of that. This week we're going to be discussing X-Men number 20, Beta Ray Bill number 3, Black Widow number 7, The Blue Flame number 1, Harley Quinn number 3, Made in Korea number 1, Monstress number 34, New Mutants number 18, Robin number 2, and Strange Academy, is that right? No, that's not right. Strange Adventures, I wrote Academy in my notes. Strange Adventures, number 10. That's more or less just things in alphabetical order with X-Men at the top, because holy moly, what a X-Men book this week. So of course, starting off with X-Men, this is worth very much noting that this is the second to last X-Men issue. The final X-Men issue, written by Jonathan Hickman, is going to be coming out next month. It's going to be issue 21. It will be part of the Hellfire Gala shebang that's going to be going on. And after that, we have July picking up with X-Men number 1 by Gary Duggan. Gary? I think it's Gary Duggan. This is something that was kind of surprising to me to hear. I'm a big fan, of course, of Jonathan Hickman. I've said that a lot. Both his Marvel work and his indie projects I'm a big fan of. And I could go on and on about why I'm a fan of his work, but we won't do that right now. I've done that enough before. It was a little surprising to hear that he is coming off of X-Men, because he is the head of X right now. Everything in the Marvel X-Men comic book universe, he is in charge of. You look at any of the, what are we in now? Reign of X is what this era is officially called. You look at any of the Reign of X X-Men comics, and they all say head of X Jonathan Hickman. And so it made sense that he was writing the main title, X-Men. Hearing the announcement that he was going to be stepping back from that was surprising because of all those reasons. And I pretty much was left to theorize that he will be working on something else, getting something else ready that's going to come out later on in the year, or that we're going to hear about later on in the year. My theory on what that was going to be was pretty out there, to be honest. My theory was, he was going to be writing a Scarlet Witch series called The Pretender, because, that's what he's having them all call her. It's a whole thing. He's touched on the whole Scarlet Witch having more than decimated the mutant population. When she did the No More Mutants, and they call her the Pretender, but she hasn't, and they touched on it about like a year ago when they did the Empire X-Men, which was the only good Empire tie-in series, by the way. It was excellent, and it showcased all of the, at that point, Dawn of X creators, who were going to be reappearing throughout Dawn of X comics, and it was just a great little showcase of that, plus a great little arc for Magic, as well as a little tease for Scarlet Witch's existence and, I guess, role in the Krakoan X-Men universe, which, like I said, they just call her the Pretender. There was this whole thing that happened where she tried to fix she tried to bring back the Genosian mutants who had died to try and fix her whole No More Mutants thing, and they became zombies, and that's what the whole Empire X-Men thing was. They were taking care of that. It was incredible. I recommend reading it. But she's been mentioned a few other times since then as the Pretender. So that was my theory. I've gone very around the block here. But that was my theory on what Jonathan Hickman was going to be doing while Gary Duggan takes over X-Men. While I'm not correct on the specifics of that, the general idea that he is stepping back to work on a project he's probably going to pick up and come back into the full, public light with later on this year is correct. So this issue of X-Men was incredible for a bunch of reasons. First of all, the art. Let me see if I can pull up the artist's name really quick here. I don't have it in front of me, but they deserve credit, so I'm going to pull up their name really quick on my computer. Their name is Francesco Mobili. Probably mispronounced that. The colorist, as usual, is Sunny Go. Absolutely fantastic coloring job, per usual. But Francesco Mobili, really, really phenomenal art. He did a really great job of capturing Raven in a really nice way. If you read the issue, I'm sure you understand. It wasn't. I'm not saying that he was like made her super, super hot or anything like that. I'm just saying he just drew her very well. I like the way he drew her in a normal way, in a not creepy way. So the main takeaways of this issue is a couple of things. Oh, but before I go into that, I have to kind of explain, if you're keeping up with the X-Men stuff or even not, I am so excited for what is happening with Mystique. Obviously, Mystique and Destiny were wives from, basically back in their origins. And through the years, of course, Mystique has been with many other people, men and women, and everything in between, but she and Destiny were always wives. And because Destiny is a precog, she can see the future and see things that are hidden. With this whole deal of the Krakoan X-Men even being a thing, they can't have precogs around because the precogs will be able to know the big secret, which is that Moira X, who is, of course, the one who, if she dies, this whole reality resets and they have to start from scratch. So she's alive, hidden beneath Krakoa. Precogs would know that, and that would not be good information to get out for so many reasons. So a couple of issues ago, many issues ago of X-Men, Hickman wrote this, oh gosh, I think it was like issue 9 or something, 8 or 9. The cover, I know it's Lena Liu drawing Mystique on the cover. Beautiful cover. Mystique is the main character on the interior too. It basically goes over how some time ago, before all of this happened, she and Destiny were sitting together, and Destiny basically told her, listen, someday, long after I'm dead, the mutants are going to find an island. I think one of the lines she says is, not the first island, but it will be the last. So there you can already see where this is going. At that time, they will be able to bring people back. And I'm telling you, Mystique, bring me back, is what Destiny says. No matter what, bring me back. And if they don't let you bring me back, burn that place to the ground. So, Destiny loves her wife, obviously, and wants her wife back. Mutants don't have to be dead. If anybody has not been brought back at this point, it is by choice of basically a dictatorship, which is just Professor X with a little bit of help of, like, Magneto and the Council, but it's mostly just him and Magneto kind of dictating who can and cannot get brought back from the resurrection protocols, I guess. So Destiny, they told Mystique that they would let her have Destiny back if she was able to take this weapon to let's call them their prime, and this is going to be a really long explanation. The prime enemies, who are called Orchis. Orchis is tied into the whole House and Powers of X, House of X, Powers of 10 thing. They are the group of anti-mutant scientists who create Nimrod, which is the basically completely unstoppable mutant killing machine. When I was told some years ago that there was an X-Men villain called Nimrod, I laughed because I thought I was being told a joke. It's not a joke. They really named this guy Nimrod. My husband loves him. He's completely obsessed with him. He's got his first appearance. We've got the action figure. It's, oh my god. He was so pumped that Nimrod is back, because in this issue we see Nimrod is back. So Mystique was going to be sent to Orcus's little base to try and destroy it before they make Nimrod. Problem is, she shows up and Nimrod is already kind of there. This Nimrod, though, is even bigger problem than any Nimrods they've ever faced, because this Nimrod, he's got all these tech upgrades and whatnot that are honestly terrifying to even think about the X-Men trying to stop this guy. He can replicate himself in an instant completely from head to toe. So it's but the thing that makes him different, aside from all of those upgrades technologically, is that his what would be AI consciousness is actually the consciousness of one of the scientists who was killed by the mutants the last time they tried to take Orchis down. And he has been brought back by way of being Nimrod by his wife, who is also an Orchis scientist, okay? So not only is he this incredibly dangerous killing machine, specifically a mutant killing machine, Nimrod is now a real man with real emotions and real connections to humanity. Problematic. To make things even more problematic, he is immediately able to spot Mystique as being a mutant through her disguise. So she kind of has to get her plan going kind of on the fly, and leaves her bomb and goes to escape. Unfortunately, for a lot of reasons, Nimrod duplicates himself and takes the bomb from the facility it was supposed to destroy off very, very far away where it won't hurt anybody but himself. However, in him duplicating himself and then the duplication, or I guess that was even the original version, getting destroyed, it was not able to survive the man's consciousness, the actual scientist man who was the Nimrod consciousness they put in to give him life, I suppose, was destroyed. That consciousness was destroyed, leaving behind just the programming of Nimrod. While that may seem like, oh good, so that guy's out of the way, no. This Nimrod that we are left with now has all of those technological advances, has the memory of having been human, having loved this woman who is the female scientist who brought him back, and then having sacrificed himself and lost that part of himself, and witnessing her grief, her intense, oh my gosh, the way this was drawn and written was so incredibly emotional. You can feel her grief on the page. It is remarkable. And so now that is what drives Nimrod. So he's able to catch up at the last moment with Mystique as she's about to get through the secret gate they planted there to Krakoa. And he basically says, congratulations, mutants, you have now made me more determined than ever to destroy you, kills her and throws her through the gate. So they bring her back, and since she failed, they tell her that she's not going to get her wife back. Which, as I discussed, is not going to be good news for the Krakoan mutants. Now, my theories coming up until this point, up until reading this issue, have pretty much been Mystique. You know, we kind of have known that this whole thing was going to come to a head with her, and she was eventually going to be like, you know what? Screw you guys, you're not giving me the one thing that I want after I've done all this crap for you, and I've been good, and blah, blah, blah. I'm going to destroy you. We know that's been coming. So my theories have been that she's going to get the, I was going to say the Sinister Six. Good job, Anna. She's going to get the Brotherhood of Mutants back together, right? Because currently Sabretooth is in a permanent prison inside of the island of Krakoa, where no one can get him, supposedly, and he can't get out. So he is definitely an asset that she can get to. I have no doubt that Sinister would love to help her out with any way that he can mess with the mutants, with the X-Men. And then I turn the page at the end of this issue. Coming this fall, Inferno. I actually yell. Now, before you roll your eyes, here's some more explaining. Inferno was a comic book event that came originally back in the 1980s. It covered, most of the main X-Men titles at the time. X-Factor, X-Men, Uncanny X-Men, of course. X-Force, New Mutants. I'm sure there's another one that I'm forgetting as well. But it covered pretty much all of the main X-Men titles. The plot to Inferno centers around Madeline Pryor, who, if you have not heard me discuss Madeline Pryor before, I am completely obsessed with. She is the Goblin Queen. She is a clone of Jean Grey that was created by Sinister, so that it's a very convoluted, complex story, but basically she was created as a character to replace Jean Grey and to live a life and marry Scott, which she did, and had his son, which she did. That's Cable is her son. It's hers. It's not Jean's son. That is Madeline's son. So that she was created to be in that position, but then they ended up bringing Jean back, and at the last moment, they were basically instructed by editorial to make Madeline a villain. And so to do that, they had this demon Sim trick her into thinking that she's dreaming when she makes a deal with him that brings out the worst parts of her personality, making her the Goblin Queen and really triggering her mutant powers. So the original Inferno event was Madeline Pryor basically trying to destroy the mutants, or rather the X-Men, and take over the world using her goblins and demons and things like that. There's a lot of other things that happens. Obviously, you have baby Nathan, who grows up to be Cable. He is there. He gets infected with a techno-organic virus during Inferno. You have several very key characters. You have some really important stuff that happens with Ileana and New Mutants, which is actually, it's the time when she pretty much is killed as Darkchild and then kind of births from within herself her pre-Limbo Ileana. So there's big stuff happening with a lot of different mutants. You have Havoc is under Madeline's control. You have Jean and Scott, who have been somewhat recently reunited in X-Factor, who, Jean is now witnessing this clone of herself doing these evil things. Jean's parents get involved. It's a very complex arc, but unfortunately it ends with Madeline basically killing herself. And we'll leave it at that. Through the years, she has been brought back. She was brought back, and I think it was 2013, in an X-Men arc that was honestly kind of lame. But she's brought back in a very unceremonious moment. And then they just kind of like send her off, and that's that. And she finally appears back in the beginning of the, gosh, what is that? The beginning of the Hellions by Zeb Wells arc, and that was where, Havoc was there, and the former Marauders were there, who were the team who tried to kill her before she became the Goblin Queen, and I'm telling you, it's convoluted, it's complicated at the very least. So Madeline was kind of, sort of, we're left to assume she probably died in the end of that Hellions arc in modern times, right? Modern history, very within the past year or two. But we never see a dead body exactly, and that Sinister can probably make a Madeline. He probably knows how to make her as well as he knows, the back of his hand. So, Inferno being a thing that's coming back this fall, I am really, really thinking that Jonathan Hickman is going to give me my Madeline Pryor back. How phenomenal would that be? That's this Inferno event. That is a thing that Jonathan Hickman has stepped back from X-Men to plan. That shit's gonna be balls to the walls, absolutely nuts, and I can't wait. I'm super here for it. This whole X-Men issue was just there hasn't been a single Jonathan Hickman X-Men issue that's been a snooze. Actually, there was one. It was one of those Empire tie-ins that took place in the summer house. It was Scott and his brother and like these two random girls who I don't even know who they were. I think one of them may have been a former... No, I honestly don't know. But there were these two girls. That was the only issue of X-Men that's ever been a snooze by Jonathan Hickman. So Gary Duggan has he's got massive shoes to fill. We'll see if he can keep up with it. But speaking of Gary Duggan, he's also currently writing, he's currently writing Marauders, as well as Secret Avengers, which is relevant because Conan in Secret Avengers was just given the Hellions, not Hellions, excuse me, the Hellfire Club mansion or whatever base to stay in for a while, and there was something about a mention about Emma Frost being there in a preview, mentioning a quote former Black King, right? Now we know the current Black King has and has always been that guy who I hate, whose name I always forget, whose son was, he came back and now his son is his duke or whatever, his bishop. We all know and hate him. And Gary Duggan, I guess, tweeted this preview of these issues where Conan is talking with Emma Frost about this former Black King. Apparently he said stay tuned with a winky face, so apparently it's very possible that they're gonna get rid of that character who we all know and hate, and switch him out. Are they gonna reveal that Conan's a mutant? That would be hilarious. I would be super into that. I know a lot of people wouldn't be because I'm sure there's reasons, but I'd be fine with it. I think it'd be great. But that's all, of course, major speculation just based around what Gary Duggan is kind of working on right now. I also have to talk about, we're going to move on now from X-Men. I think I've covered that pretty well. Ooh, I do have one, I lied. I have one more note about the X-Men, and that is that this Gary Duggan X-Men is going to start in July. I'm going to predict that that's going to start with them dealing with this Orcus group and this new Nimrod. It's going to be it's probably going to be October until this Inferno event happens. So he's got a little bit of time to kind of give them some stuff. We also have Children of the Vault, remember, who were a couple of issues ago, revealed to be a soon to be very big problem for the mutants, if not already a very big problem. So that is something to look forward to in probably the Gary Duggan X-Men series as well. But either way, Jonathan Hickman's Inferno coming this fall. Mystique getting the Brotherhood together, no doubt a somewhat new lineup, but no doubt completely terrifying to the X-Men. And also, can I just say how phenomenal it is that Jonathan Hickman is writing... He's writing Professor X and Magneto as basically the cold-hearted villains to Mystique here. You're supposed to hate them for this. When she comes back after getting resurrected, after going through this whole ordeal in this issue, she asks, "What about my wife?" And they look at her, and they look at each other, and they look back at her, and they say, "What about her?" And that's their answer. They can't even say, "No, you're not getting her." They just say, "What about her?" Because in their minds, it's understood that she failed, and therefore she does not get her wife back. So you're not supposed to like them. You're supposed to want her to tear their shit down, and I cannot wait for that to happen this fall in Inferno. Now we're officially moving on from X-Men. I think I've covered it all now. Moving on to Beta Ray Bill number 3. This is unfortunately only out of 5. I would be fine with this series just replacing the current Thor series. I think it's far more interesting than the current Thor series. I think that Daniel Warren Johnson is just killing it in every aspect. There was a lot of gunfire and battle sequences and damaged ships and things like that in this issue as the events went as they went. But Daniel Warren Johnson's art is very interesting in that it's extremely messy, but neat. You can, and he posted not a process video, but just like an in-process photo today, and I find it fascinating that you can look at his art, and it's in a sense, it's just a bunch of scribbles, but they're scribbles that are so precise that it shows exactly what he wants it to show, and it's completely clear what's going on in the frame, even though it's a frame full of scribbles, wild and crazy angry scribbling, which not only makes it a really intense scene, but makes the movement of the scene seem a lot more jarring and momentous. For example, there is a really intense scene of Beta Ray Bill and Scuttlebutt playing ping pong. Now, Scuttlebutt is, of course, his ship. When they went into, what is it, Muspelheim? I don't know how to pronounce it, but the realm they're in, when they got into that, the weird magic of the realm, and the fact that that the ship is a combination of the Corbinite technology and Asgardian magic. Scuttlebutt was kind of given a corporeal humanoid body. She is now the ship as well as this robot. They are one and they are her. So, and it's very, very clear that Scuttlebutt has got the hots for Bill, which is cute in a sense, but also hella weird, man. That is like, it's cute. It's cute, but oh wow, that's something. But anyway, there's this really intense scene of Bill and this robot Scuttlebutt thing playing ping pong, and that intense momentous scratchiness of Daniel Warren Johnson's art really is what makes their ping pong battle look so intense. Somewhat elongated limbs, fleeing their arms and things around, trying to hit the ball. It was a really cool scene. There's a bunch of scenes where his art really, his scratchy, kind of messy style of art actually ends up adding to it. I mean, I think it always does, but it was particularly noticeable in this issue. For the most part, they're going through a lava flow in Muspelheim, whatever it is. They're going through a lava flow, and Scuttlebutt's actual ship is getting very, very damaged. She has the ability to now rearrange the physical panels of the ship to kind of rotate which ones are being burned and not, to do the least amount of damage possible. But it's still doing her a lot of damage. And interestingly, and kind of understandably, her physical kind of humanoid form falls apart as the ship does. So, unfortunately, I do have the theory that Bill is going to get to where he's trying to get to. He's going to get the sword, but then for whatever reason, Scuttlebutt is going to have to sacrifice herself, and Scuttlebutt will end up being destroyed, dying, whatever you want to say that. Also in this issue, though, on the same note, Scuttlebutt gifted Bill with an axe. It's kind of a super-powered axe because it's got, like, some kind of engine in it where if he throws it, it'll basically do the Mjolnir thing where it'll go really, 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 really hard, intensely, and then come back to him. It's got some kind of little engine in it that makes it do that. It's really cool. So my theory is Scuttlebutt's gonna die, and he's gonna choose to use this axe and be himself as this Beta Ray Bill, this powered up Asgardian version of himself in honor with this new axe in honor of Scuttlebutt, as opposed to changing back into his Corbinite form with the sword, whatever the sword is it's called. Surtur's sword. So that's just my theory right now. I would love for Scuttlebutt not to have to die, but that's just kind of how I see things play out. But otherwise, I just don't really see them having Bill just kind of perusing the galaxy with his robot sex toy. I see that being kind of a bit of a problem, a bit of an issue for them to make work, but who knows? We'll see. I think that'd be more positive for sure than Scuttlebutt having to sacrifice herself, but just knowing the way that stories kind of work, that's what I'm guessing right now. Black Widow number 7 is, of course, by Kelly Thompson and Elena Casagrande. I had to take a moment to stop and appreciate Elena Casagrande's interiors in this issue, because we did have a guest artist in the last issue, and he did do a really fantastic job of mimicking her art to the point that you could almost not notice that it was a guest artist. But this issue really made me stop and take that moment to really soak in all the beauty of her art and her paneling and her layouts, especially in her fight scenes. I know people have talked about this a lot regarding the series, but Elena Casagrande's fight choreography in her panel layouts is absolutely phenomenal. You can watch it very clearly across the page. The moves from one panel to a next, from one page to a next, make a lot of sense. You can basically see the dance of the fight happening really clearly on the page as the comic goes along through her art. So that's something that's really always worth noting for Black Widow, because she really does have a phenomenal she just have some phenomenal interiors on this, and I really do hope that she gets a lot more Marvel work going forward. In this issue, we have Black Widow has kind of a new sidekick, lackey, friend. She's this teenage girl who used to work for Apogee, who is this new villain, who is very mysterious still, just in the past couple of issues, who we've kind of heard of. And it seems that they have this new sidekick was used in Apogee's superhuman testing. So she's now dealing with some kind of superpowers that involve electricity. She doesn't know how to deal with them. She doesn't know how to handle them. So Natasha kind of just wanted to help her, and Yelena is taking that extra step and is actually training her for, being like their sidekick partner, little helper person for real. Nat doesn't really want that to happen. She thinks that Yelena is trying to make her own Red Room, kind of jokingly, but Yelena thinks that it's the best option for what's kind of going on right at this point, which is probably correct, including the fact that Natasha is still kind of getting over a very, very recent trauma of basically having to let go of a family. may not have been really real physically. They were physically real, but it may not have been things that happened for a very long time themselves, but the memories of being there for a very long time are there. So it counts as having been a full family experience. And they went off to wherever it was that Bucky took them off to secretly. Everyone else thinks that they're dead besides herself and Bucky. And the first panels of this issue are her remembering waking up next to her husband and her infant son. And then waking up in this training facility by herself. And there's actually a really nice comment about how the sounds she wakes up to now are completely different than the sounds that she woke up to at that time when she had the family. So she's clearly still getting over this, and I have no doubt Yelena wants to help use training this new protege, I guess you would say, to help her get over some of those hard things that she went through. The Blue Flame #1, it was by Christopher Cantwell. That's why I picked it up. It's one of those cases of a writer that I'm familiar with from the Big Two goes over to do an indie comic. Those are usually really phenomenal. This one was really, really good. I'm not sure how long I'll stick with it. We'll kind of see what happens in the second issue. It kind of appears to be, we seem to be seeing two different sides of a story. But part of me wonders if it's more complicated than what it kind of looks like on face value. It's basically your standard superhero story. It's a blue-collar working man who does his best to protect the galaxy as a superhero secretly and, tries to fit in with his neighborhood and everything like a normal person. But then we see that he's taken by some aliens and is put on trial on behalf of Earth. But then the issue ends with him in a hospital bed, and the way that everything kind of went down, it kind of makes it almost seem like he's actually in a coma, not having this trial in space. I could be reading way more into that than I'm supposed to be. It could just be really showing us two different time periods of his life. The hospital one being, in the past, and of course the being on trial on behalf of Earth being the present. So if it is anything more than that, I'll be getting the second issue and I will see what happens then. Harley Quinn by Stephanie Phillips and Riley Rossmo is in its third issue this week, and I would say it is still going just as strong as it did at the start of the series. Harley in this issue tries to set up a support group for former Joker clowns, or rather clowns who worked for the Joker, and it doesn't look like it was going to show up at first, and then some people actually do show up. And it's kind of they start to have an interesting chat, but unfortunately one of them turns out to be working with the current villain of the series, and turns them all over to him, and everybody ends up getting captured except for Harley, who ends up in a sewer fighting Grundy, of all people. So she's clearly not made many friends recently in Gotham, and everybody who is not a obvious friend is kind of out to get her in a little bit of a way. I really am enjoying this series. One thing that's really fun about it is Riley Rossmo's art is a bit ridiculous and kind of stupid, honestly, but it works perfectly for the series. His designs for her little sidekick, her new costume, I absolutely adore her new outfit. It's very much going back to the classic just red and white and black Harley that we know from her, more closer to her origin, without actually making her look like a clown, because of course she is trying to separate herself from the Joker. And that's kind of part of why she's setting up this support group, is because she wants to look more like a bit of a hero, or at least like not a villain, and B, she wants to kind of find a purpose, and this purpose would very much serve her in that it uses her abilities as a technical psychiatrist. I don't know if she doesn't really have her doctor's license anymore, but she does have the training, so it gives her a purpose in being able to do that and help people, and feels like she's accomplishing something in regards to the trauma that has happened to her and really all of Gotham at this point. So I'm super excited to see kind of what happens going forward with this. She's obviously going to have to save at least her little buddy, if not the rest of the Joker, the former Joker clowns who were just kidnapped, to get experimented on and stuff. It's probably not going to go well for them, if I had to guess. But that is kind of your whole shtick when you are a former Joker clown, or a Joker clown at all, that's your life's just not going to be normal. Made in Korea #1 was a really fun first issue. I absolutely loved it. It takes place in an age where I guess most, if not all people, they can no longer have children. It seemed similar to the Handmaid's Tale's original explanation of the women can't have kids anymore. So instead, there are these robot kids that families can adopt, I guess, from Korea, that are uncannily lifelike. There's several scenes where people are talking about how shocking it is how lifelike they are. But there definitely seems to be a hesitant stigma around them, especially in America, it seems. The couple who we follow, who are kind of the main characters of the issue, they go to like a birthday party that's really like a welcome home party for their rich friends who got one of these robot kids. And you see they arrive at whatever age I guess they arrive at, and that's the age they stay. So it's not a baby that they have, it's a I don't know, 10-year-old, 8-year-old. I honestly have no idea. I'm terrible with guessing ages. So the couple shows up to this party, and you can see their apparent distaste for the idea very clearly, as well as the funny duality of the mother's incandescent joy of having this, child, even though it's not real, and the father's facade of caring, which clearly hides, as you see later, major apathy towards this robot child. And then towards the end of the party, once that's all said and done, the couple can't stop considering their own robot child. Meanwhile, there is a programmer who works for the company that makes these robot children, who finally finishes, he's over there in Korea, and he finally finishes some crazy version of their coding, unsure of what it is yet, and sends a robot child out with that coding in it for super cheap, trying to make sure that it gets out there into the world. We don't know what the code is, we don't know why he's so desperate to get it out there, and we don't know why later on he denies to a coworker that he solved the code, whatever it was. So clearly it's something he wanted to be secret, but was desperate to get out there into the world. So this very, very discounted robot child was purchased, of course, by that couple who we're following through the series. She arrives, everything seems normal at first. They take her out of her little tube thing or whatever it is, but after they do the little turn on with the button in the back of her head, she wakes up and leaps backwards, completely terrified. They're able to coax her out and eventually get her to greet them kind of normally, and the issue ends there. Still no answers as to what it is that's different about this robot child. However, it's very clear there is something very different. The end of the issue includes a fun story that's written and drawn by another creator altogether that shows a completely different story of one of these robot children that gets sent to a home with a young girl whose parents had died in a car accident. She was the only survivor. The young girl is there as the human girl grows, and then as time goes on, she eventually becomes the human girl's daughter when that human girl is old enough to have a daughter of her own. It's kind of a sweet little story, definitely very odd, but very odd in the best way. Monstress was completely great, as always. This is issue number 34 this month. I just wanted to mention, instead of trying to explain it all, I just wanted to mention the couple of things that stood out to me in my memory as the cool things that happened. Of course, this issue was showing the let me think, the ancient wolf queen attacking Micah and Kippa, and we get to see Kippa has the kind of magical sight. It's some kind of gift where she can focus on somebody and she will see their true form. So she focuses her, her vision on the ancient wolf queen and sees that she actually has similar features to the gods that Zin and the other ones are, who are of course from another dimension. Now, the Wolf Queen here at this moment has been poisoned by something, and that has caused her to have this great rage, and that's why she's fighting them all that's why she's fighting them at all. So the theory here is it possible that poison is made from the blood of the gods or something like that? We also got to see, we know Micah's father has his own plan. We're not really sure what it is yet, but he's up to something in his fun little city sequestered off to the side of the world. And we see at one point in the issue, we get to see some really cool stuff. I'll get there in a second. To fight her infected grandmother, Micah ends up putting on the 2 pieces of the ancient mask that she's been able to collect. It's got a couple more pieces. This is basically just the top half of the mask. But she puts them together and puts them on, and in that moment, it's of course the overwhelming surge of power, and then we get to see her father in his little humble abode, wherever it is that he is. His like little city he runs has 2 or 3 of these ancient gods guarding it, and as she puts the mask on up there in the sky, we've seen this before a long time ago in the series, the sky opens up and another one of these gods looks down with its gigantic eye on them, because remember, these things are from a different universe. Oh, it's one of those really wild monstrous things where it's like, yeah, this is a hardcore fantasy series. It's about like animals and people and magic, and then they bring this thing as, just kidding, it's also about space travel and multiverses, and like, it's just awesome. I love it. So anyway, Micah's putting on the mask to fight her grandmother. Inside, on her inside, when she does this, she and the god Zin that she's attached to are completely overwhelmed by the voices of the other gods, until finally Zin's beloved, who is of course the priestess who originally connected with him, she swoops in and rescues them, keeping them off limits from the voices of those evil, presumably gods. And finally, Micah and Zin are able to connect in, I guess, a new way, and she comes out with this really cool black battle armor. It looked awesome. Another moment of me yelling while reading comics this week, because I'm really pumped up about stuff. It happens. So she ends up, Micah, in this new body armor, she ends up being able to beat her grandmother, and then she saves Tuya, who, if you remember, Tuya is her childhood friend who became her lover, who then was split up with her. They were forced apart for whatever it was that happened, and since then, Tuya has been revealed that Tuya is a spy for another royal family, and she ends up marrying Micah's aunt. So, a bit of a complicated situation. My husband said he was kind of mad that Micah ends up kissing Tuya and taking off with her, but I definitely, this is just a moment of passion. This is not going to be happily ever after for them. That's not what this is showing. This was Micah just taking the moment to swoop her up off her feet, literally, while she goes off and finishes her fight. So, they're gonna have some difficult discussions. Micah literally walked in on her having sex with her aunt. Like, this is not just gonna get swooped under the rug. But I'm excited to see, kind of all the craziness happen as it goes down. This was such a fun issue. I'm constantly getting more excited for what's happening next with Monstress. Vita Ayala is, of course, killing it still on New Mutants. This issue had a really cool fight between Danny Moonstar and Karma, which I know sounds like not a good thing, but they were fighting in the Crucible, which is, if you remember, since mutants can get brought back from the dead now, any mutant, if they were a mutant who had been depowered in that whole No More Mutants Scarlet Witch incident, or for whatever reason are depowered, they can come and fight in the Crucible and die in the Crucible, and then they get brought back with their full power set, or however they want to be brought back. Which is why there are some issues that have brought up in this. There are a couple of characters, I don't remember the main one's name, who is kind of at the center of all this, but one of them is No Girl, who is just a brain in a jar, basically, that floats around. I don't know why I sounded Australian for half a second there. But you can kind of see where I'm going with this is they don't have normal bodies. One of them is like a lizard dude, one of them is a new character, and one of them is like a water boy. And they're made out of non-normal materials, and so in their eyes, they should be able to fight in the Crucible and be brought back with their powers, but with their physical bodies intact the way they were basically born with them. Without the major mutations that happen to them physically, through their lives. So they're, of course, very upset they don't get to fight in the Crucible, and you can totally see where they're coming from. But you can also see why the mutants argue that they should not be allowed to do that, because they are... this was their mutation, that they should love themselves for the way that they are, even if they think they're hideous or don't have a normal body or whatever. It's all a very complicated idea. So Danny Moonstar and Karma are fighting in the Crucible because Karma, her body contains basically the essence of her brother. It's from... a series of convoluted plot lines, not just one, from through the years. So she was entering the Crucible now to earn resurrection in the hopes that she and her brother will come back as separate entities, as opposed to kind of sharing a body, basically. And the Crucible now is overwatched by Silver Samurai. It was overwatched by Apocalypse, but Apocalypse was, of course, with his wife on a Rocco now, waiting to be a problem in a couple of years for the mutants of Krakoa, I have no doubt. So now we have Silver Samurai, who I suppose is the main fighter, I guess antagonist or whatever, for the people who join the Crucible, unless they have someone like in this case, and like in Callisto's case a few issues ago, I guess it was Marauders, where they can choose someone to fight. Callisto, of course, chose Storm, and Karma, of course, chose Danny Moonstar because they have a very deep connection for a lot of reasons. So when she comes back after this whole fight, it's a very, very well done fight scene. She comes back, she is just Karma, she does not have her body, her does not have her brother in her body anymore. We don't see her brother, but we can kind of assume that he's gonna have come back as well. Meanwhile, Scout, who is Honey Badger, she's one of the X-23 clones, she gets some advice from John Proudstar on handling the Shadow King situation, and he basically tells her to trust her gut. The Shadow King situation is, Shadow King is grooming the youngest set of New Mutants by taking advantage of their wanting to be physically different than they are. Those are the same ones who had the desire to fight in the Crucible to normalize their physical bodies on Resurrection. He has taught them how to use their powers in combination to body jump, and therefore experience being in quote-unquote normal bodies. And you can see the problematicness that this brings up, which is, of course, I'm sure, why Vita Ayala is writing it. So it's all very interesting. He's obviously doing something not good here, right? Shadow King, we know that he's clearly tricking them. So Scout, hearing that she should trust her gut, she goes to confront her friends, and it kind of turns into an argument before Rain interrupts. And she kind of has this conversation with Scout and ends up taking her to Shadow King herself, which was really bizarre to read. I get that everybody has a home on Krakoa and everyone's getting a second chance, but why is she just letting this happen? She literally takes Scout and walks her up to Shadow King and says, "All right, guys, have fun," and leaves. That's Krakoa or not, that is not normal. There's no way. She's got to be under his influence. Maybe this has something to do with her missing son. Maybe he's holding something over her, bribing her. I don't know. But that did not seem normal. Something is definitely up with Rain involving Shadow King. And I don't think it's gonna be anything too good. Robin number 2 was pretty good. I'm not sure if this is an ongoing or an of 6 or 9 or something like that series, but I'm definitely digging. I'm definitely going to issue 3. This issue basically starts by saying we should have known that no one dies on Lazarus Island based on the name, and it's right. That does seem pretty obvious now. That last issue, well, the first issue, of course, ended with Robin, Damian Wayne getting his heart pulled out of his chest by this new villain who I guess is like the sidekick of Death or something like that. And we find out here in this issue the rules of the island: fight anyone during the daylight hours to the death, aside from in certain areas that are off limits. You have 3 deaths, and after your 3rd death, that's it for you. Whoever is left at the end gets, I believe it was eternal life was the prize. So Robin obviously wants to be here because he wants to prove that he's the best. There's a couple of other characters who are on the island who clearly are up to something or want to win for a specific reason other than just the prize. And Ravager, who is Deathstroke's daughter, is also there, Rose Wilson. And she is not there while she is in the competition, because that's what the island is, she is not there for the competition, but she's there for something else. I don't think we found out yet what that is. But the whole island is up to something. There's an enormous Lazarus pit, of course, running the island. And a lot of this definitely, we're gonna find out some weird things. I have no doubt, but I'm enjoying this Robin series. It's only 2 issues in, but it's pretty fun. He's got a fun little new outfit. I want them to age him up though. I'm kind of tired of him being a kid. It's been long enough. This is not a comic strip in a newspaper. Please let him grow. Strange Adventures is Tom King. I got so excited about this, man. I knew it. It's so satisfying to be a comic book reader. And in this case I will say Tom King comic book reader, and to become familiar enough with his style of writing that I start to kind of see where he's going with things. It's very satisfying, and this was such a fun read because we finally get your suspicions confirmed, or not confirmed, depending on what your suspicions were. I fucking knew it, man. I knew it. In issues 1 or 2, I thought that Alana she'd done something to their daughter, her and Adam's daughter, and she was keeping it from Adam. But that was only the first couple of issues. Easily by issue 4, I was getting more and more convinced that it was Adam himself who did something. He just seemed way too gung-ho about this whole investigation, way too open, way too honest, but there weren't actually really a whole lot of answers being given. There was just always a little bit of something off with his responses, where Alana was always a lot more confident and assured of herself. My husband and I had actually guessed that Adam had traded his daughter to stop the war on Rand in exchange for Earth's secrets, and it turns out that is exactly what happened. This issue is pretty much narrated by Mr. Terrific's letter to Alana that began at the very, very end of the last issue, and it's telling her how he came to the conclusion that he has now come to. Visually, we see Adam's story of freeing Rand the way that he has told it, and that is with the Doc Shaner art. On the other side, the Mitch Gerads art, we see present day for the DC Universe series, with Alana going through her day from putting on her makeup in the morning to taking it off that night, furious after having spent the day pondering that letter. She does throughout the day normal Alana strange things. She is basically a diplomat, so she does some speeches, she does some handshaking, she kisses some babies, she takes pictures with some soldiers, she jumps around in the jetpack for some fun video footage. More speeches, more pictures, more handshaking, only to come home and you see her kind of not fall apart, because she's not that kind of woman, but she not snaps isn't quite right either. She kind of just gave up hiding her real emotion and let that come out, and ends up punching her mirror, and at that moment, it's the end of the issue. Adam comes home to find the letter and her furious at the top of the stairs. So clearly at the beginning of the next issue, oh god, I hope it's the beginning of the next issue, I don't want to have to wait, they're gonna have a tough conversation, and we are gonna find out exactly what Adam did with his daughter. Basically where it all stands is, we were correct about the whole thing. He traded his daughter to stop the war on Ran, and the villains, whose names I can't remember right now, chose to lose that war in order to get Earth secrets from Adam and to win the bigger battle, which is with Earth. So that is how these the Clicks, I think are their name, Climps, something like that. That's how they are kind of doing a really good job at fighting a war with Earth right now, is because Adam is on the inside giving them all the information that they need, because they have his daughter. So the path to Mr. Terrific finding out what really happened was super cool, showing how Adam Strange, like I said, he basically let the Justice League think that he's a piece of shit in order for them to not see the truth of what he really did. As Alana comes to the end of the letter, it was a really cool artistic detail, not artistic detail, but it was a really cool usage of art to portray an idea. It was, as she comes to the end of the letter, it was Doc Shainer's Ran portion of the art and the story started to fade off, kind of signifying how that was all a fiction built and illustrated by Adam. That wraps up the comic book pull list, or pick list, I should say. If you have nothing here that sounded interesting to you, I do recommend checking out your local comic book shop and seeing what else came out this week, because I only ever talk about a minute fraction of the things that are actually coming out in comic books. There is so much more out there, so definitely take some money. Your local comic shop would love to take that money from you and give you something that you will totally enjoy reading, so be sure to do that. We had the Black Lightning finale this week. I was a couple of episodes behind, but we caught up over this past week, and here is basically what happened in a sort of brief summary. They are 100% getting us ready, prepping the audiences for the Painkiller show that's going to be coming out, I assume, later this year. Khalil's had a pretty big role in these last couple of episodes. He finally gets to see, reveal himself to Jefferson. He kind of helps out with, he kills the big bad of Black Lightning for this last season. But then at the end here, Khalil ends up having to lose all of his memories in order to remove the kill order code that is in the Painkiller part of his brain for Jefferson, so that he can, so that Jefferson basically can live his life without thinking that Painkiller is ever going to show up to kill him, because he has that kill order code kind of programmed into him, and unfortunately they had to get rid of the memories to get it out, so now he's not going to really bump into him anyway. So we'll see if any of the Pierce family actually show up in the Painkiller show. I would kind of enjoy that, but we'll see. I think this was them kind of signifying that's not going to happen. Turns out also that the new Jen actually was not Jen. It was kind of, for me, unexpected, because I just don't... they had kind of created more problems in a way, because then you have the real Jen who comes back and is like, damn, the only person who even considered that wasn't me was Dad. People must really not like me. Life sucks. And it's like, okay, that did nothing for the story. So it turned out that new Jen was actually some kind of like alien entity who stole Jen's essence and her body and her DNA. And so then we have the regular Jen comes back with her shaved head at the end here. And I remember doing all my research on this actress having left the show for good, in the first 2 episodes, I believe it was, of this 4th season, and how she wasn't going to be coming back. And that's pretty much where that had landed at through finding out that she actually was back. So I'm curious what happened. There's no way this was the plan from the start. I don't see how that could have possibly been their plan from the start. Because it was such a, when it happens, it is such a, oh, all of a sudden you find out she's an alien, okay. It was very sudden. So I don't think that was the plan from the start. I think the actress, my theory is the actress who played Jennifer for the first time wanted to come back, or they paid her enough money and fixed the deal and had her come back to wrap up the show or something. I don't know. This is all just me majorly spitballing into the breeze. And then we have Tobias basically kills Jefferson. He thinks that he's killed him pretty much. He leaves him there to die. But then at the very last moment, Jefferson gets his powers back because, of course, they've been without their powers, and survives in order to fight Tobias, once again. And this time he kills him, but on accident, kind of, because he pushes him through a window, and Tobias lands on, like, a pike, and it gets through his chest. This scene, okay, real talk, this scene was terrible. You have kind of bad CGI of Tobias with a stake through his chest, lying backwards on the stake, and then he whips out, okay, right, 6-inch hole in his chest with the pole still through it, right? So then he whips out of his 2 pockets with both arms his pistols and starts shooting Wild West style at Black Lightning. Excuse me? He has a stake through his spinal column. He should not be able to move. I get, okay, it's a show, it's a TV show about superheroes. This was stupid. This was a really dumb death scene. Because then, on top of all this, once he's shooting Jefferson comes in and lightnings him to death. Which, of course, the only cool part about that is once Tobias is dead, his body shrivels up because he's like ancient or whatever. And also, it was also really, this was super stupid. I remember mentioning the last time I talked about Black Lightning, how Tobias had, like, it was revealed that he's like a lackey of these super powerful people from around the world that are massive cliches of their place of origin. And I mentioned how that seemed kind of pointless, and it ended up being completely pointless because he just kills them in this episode, or at least kills one of them and gets the rest of them to bow down to him. But then he goes and dies, so, I don't really know what the point of a lot of that was. Just filling in time to finish the allotted episodes that we can get through to, get Painkiller running on his show, I guess. And then in the end, Jefferson and Lynn decide to remarry, because, I guess they're gonna go to couples therapy again and, try to make it work this time for, like, the 3rd time. But okay. And then, of course, in the end of the show, you have to have it ending on a cliffhanger, which I'm guessing is going to be picked up in the Painkiller show. We'll see. I will definitely be watching the Painkiller show, by the way. In the end, remember that Carbonite moment that we had with the Han Solo moment, with Lala, right? The villain who didn't die, so they put him in cement and put a spell on him that he wouldn't be able to get out. Well, now that Tobias is dead, the spell broke, so he's able to get out of the cement block that he was put in. And immediately he looks out the window and finds Tobias's dead body. And like I said, that's something that's no doubt going to be picked up in the Painkiller show, because that's exactly how the finale of Black Lightning ends. So it's like a good finale, but it's kind of, there was something that just were like, oh, okay, well, I guess none of that mattered at all, so why'd we do it? But okay. Really excited for Painkiller. They clearly were putting more energy into that, and they clearly took a lot of budget from the Black Lightning show and put it into Superman and Lois, which is what we're going to talk about next. I'm mostly just gonna go over the relevant events and reveals of the Superman and Lois episodes because I am a little bit petty and bitter about the whole Black Lightning being canceled to make room for this show, because that just doesn't make sense why that had to happen. But there was some really cool things that happened, and I definitely think things worth mentioning. Yeah, same thing, I guess. But so to start, though, to kind of preface this, there's been a bit of a turn on the second half, I guess, of the first season, in terms of the writing quality. I guess maybe it's not so much a turn, just like it's not quite as it was fine before. The plot itself is great. The writing specifically was okay. The writing in these episodes that I just caught up on was, less than that. We were sitting on the couch together, me and my husband, watching this, and I think I called out what the character was gonna say right before they said it, exactly what they were gonna say, probably 5 times. Just like predicting what they were gonna say right before they said it, and I was right, like, every single time. That's not a good sign. Just like in San Andreas, if you saw that trash with The Rock, first of all, how is Alexandria Daddario The Rock's daughter in any universe? What the hell? Okay, also, that movie was so bad for so many reasons. But the end, this is how bad these certain lines of the Superman and Lois episodes was the end of San Andreas. Everything's, been destroyed or whatever. They had the massive earthquakes, and, parts of California have dropped off into the ocean or whatever's going on. And The Rock and his wife and his, I guess, ex-wife, who's now going to be his wife again, because of course that's what happens in these movies and things. Black Lightning and Lynn. She looks at him and she goes, "What happens now?" And I swear to God, I was sitting there watching this movie and I said, he's going to say, "We rebuild." And he looks out over the water and he goes, "We rebuild." It was those kinds of moments in Superman and Lois where it was like, oh my God, they're going to say this. And they said it. Like, those are not good writer moments, okay? Do better, please. So, moving beyond that, the big reveals of this episode that were kind of fun to find out was let's go with the first one is the character of Lex Luthor from the other reality, who was going around in the kind of super suit beaten up Superman. Turns out that he is Steel, the character who from the comics is John Henry Irons, and we actually learned that the version of him that lived in this world, where Superman is now, with his family and everything, that was John Henry Irons, who is, of course, the Steel from the comics. However, the same guy in his world, he is Lex Luthor. But they don't know that yet. They know that he is a Luthor, but they now did a DNA thing. They think that he's John Henry Irons, using the Luthor name. But they also know he's from another world, so it's kind of it hasn't all fallen into place for them yet. And they also haven't learned that Lois was his wife in that world. They also had a daughter, he and Lois did. And after Lois, we see her being killed publicly on television by Superman. He and his daughter do the Iron Man thing, and they make a steel suit. And that is Steel, right? And he calls his daughter Bug or something like that, which I feel like is kind of a cliche. I don't know. Maybe that was just me being negative. I don't know. I still kind of feel like it's a dumb cliche. But anyway, it also seems that he's obviously from his universe and he's in this other universe because of everything that happened with the Monitor whatever it was situation. Anti-Monitor situation, I guess. I think that's what it was, right? I think that's what it was. There's a whole Crisis on Infinite Earths they did. And that's what pulled him into this other reality. Apparently, that happened either as he was fighting or heading to fight that evil Superman. So he never even got a chance to use his steel suit on the Superman of his own world. It would seem that he was pulled out right at that moment and never saw his daughter again. So that's a bit sad for him, but also you shouldn't just assume that this world is going to be exactly the same, especially if you went by an entirely different name in this world. So one thing that I noticed about those scenes where you get to see this Lex Luthor's his reality is the evil Superman who attacked Metropolis. He did that with at least 2 other Kryptonians, which makes me think those must be John and Jordan, his sons, on that world, right? But as we see with the, good version, regular version of his sons here with Lois, they wouldn't have their full Kryptonian powers with a human mother. So they would have to have a Kryptonian mother, as well, for them to have had their full powers. So, with that in mind, do you see what I'm asking here? Did this version of Superman have sex with Supergirl to make these sons? I don't think they're actually going to go that far as to say that. But that would be the nail in the coffin of, yes, this is an irredeemably evil Superman who was on this world. That would definitely drive that point across. I mean, we already saw him kill Lois, tear down buildings, but, that would be, for sure, that would be twisted on a whole other level. I don't know if they would even breathe in that direction, though, so, I could just be a disgusting human being. To be clear, that's not something that I would be like, oh yeah, that's cool. That would be, just wild. Problematic, obviously, but just wild. There is also, of course, the possibility that his kids with Lois do actually become fully superpowered, just in time. So, I guess we'll find that out from this Lex Luthor guy, going forward, I assume, if he'll have some insight on who those guys were with Superman, or people were with Superman. Also, we have, later in the episode, Steel/Lex tries to attack Superman. He ends up using, red sun lenses on his RV to take him out, until his sons, John and Jordan, show up and hit the dude with the car and save him. And the only other thing that's really relevant with this episode is that, Jordan is getting more powers. His super hearing is now coming in, and also the rich guy who is making Kryptonians in Smallville is, he has chosen one of Lana Lang's best good friends. I guess they know each other, but, and Lana has been made aware by Lois that he's making Kryptonians, potentially, in a deadly way, so shit's gonna hit the fan. Finally, for my media catch-up segment, there is the Modok TV series that is on Hulu. It's on Hulu, so you have to deal with commercials. And is it just me, or was it, way more commercials than they normally have on shows? It was pretty annoying, which is the reason why I haven't finished it, because I can only watch so many commercials before I just give up and put on something that doesn't have commercials, because I hate advertising. But anyway, haven't finished the series, but it was pretty funny. I'm not, crazy familiar with Modok in the comics, because he's, let's face it, not a character who matters. At least right now, or anytime recently. But what the show premise is basically, he's the guy in charge of AIM. He has the, sidekick at AIM who's, she's not a sidekick, but she wants to kill him and take over AIM or whatever. But then they end up being friends by the end of the series. And then he's got a wife who's just a regular human lady, and they have a daughter. Their daughter is she's like Modok, and then their son is just a regular son like his wife. But he's for lack of a better word, he is a pansy. I don't mean to say that in any kind of terms of his sexuality. I have no idea what that would be. I would guess asexual based on the show, but he is a pansy. I mean that in the nicest way possible, because it's hilarious and he's cute, I guess. So this, yeah, it's fun. It's one thing that's kind of fun to think about. You can look these pictures up online. Is they filmed, this was like a lot of stop motion stuff, but then they filmed Modok. He's voiced by the guy who he's voiced by, and he's actually there in the suit. Patton Oswalt, that's who it is. He's actually there in the Modok suit. Obviously, that his legs sticking out. That's a green screen. The green screen over his legs, but his arms are there in the suit. So any arm motions, any body motions, him moving around, doing things, that's all Patton Oswalt inside that suit. So that's pretty funny. You can look up pictures of that that are online. They released sometime before the show came out. If you are at all interested in that, maybe he'll make you more interested in the show. It is. Also, while it is, somewhat animated, stop motion, and it is very, very funny. Holy hell, it's not for kids. Oh my god. Do not let your children watch this. Holy shit. Do not let your children watch this. They do have a maturity warning at the beginning of each episode, I believe, so that's good. But just in case you missed that, Modok is not a show safe for kids or the mild of stomach/heart. Just to be aware. You should know that before you go into it. Moving on to the news and announcements and, I guess, rumors segment of the podcast. First off, we have some Secret Invasion casting news. Every couple of weeks, it seems we have a rumor or an official, casting announcement, and this time it is an official casting announcement. Christopher Mcdonald has been cast in Secret Invasion as a, unsurprisingly, secret character. If I was to bet money on things, I would definitely bet all of my money that he's going to be a pink-skinned Skrull, just because looking at him, that is what I see them doing with him. Marvel has stated that he is a new character that could end up crossing over into the wider MCU, which doesn't mean a whole ton, because most of their new and relevant characters do that. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see what that ends up being, or if we get any other kind of news as we get closer to the Secret Invasion premiere show. Yeah. Whatever it's gonna be, I know it's gonna be a show, but whatever the plot and the cast and everything, whatever it all ends up being, I have no doubt it's gonna be really, really fun to watch and to experience as it comes out, because the whole plot of it is espionage, basically. I think that's going to be awesome. We're going to get all kinds of characters introduced who are probably going to stick around for a while. Who knows? This guy could be one of them. So lots of good stuff to look forward to there for the Secret Invasion. The HBO Green Lantern show also has some casting announcements from this week. Alan Scott, who is of course the original what was that, Silver Age? Oh gosh, I'm terrible with the eras, what times they're all at. But he was the, Justice Society Green Lantern, who was always intended to be gay, and they only were recently able to have him come out as gay in honestly one of the worst written anthology comics I have ever read. It was quite terrible. But it finally happened, and that was what mattered. But Alan Scott, he has finally come out, and he has been cast for the Green Lantern HBO series as actor, or with actor, Jeremy Irvine. There has not been a lot this actor's been in that I have seen, if anything. There was some movie that he had a very small role in. Julia Roberts was in it. No, Emma Roberts was in it. Not Julia Roberts, is her aunt. Emma Roberts was in it, and Mia... No. What's it for Resident Evil? Ugh, I feel so stupid for not remembering her name. I've been a fan of her for such a long time. But they were in it. That's the only movie I've ever seen him in. He had a very small role, and I'm pretty sure it just was irrelevant at the end. So I can't tell you anything about his acting abilities. He seems to have been in a hell of a lot of romantic comedy type, not romantic comedies necessarily, but romance type properties. So we're just gonna have to see what happens with that, man. I don't know. I don't know about. I don't know. Not that I don't know. I don't trust about this. I just generally don't have any really opinions on it because I can't tell you anything about Jeremy Irvine. He's 30. He looks like he's probably in his mid to late 20s. So that's, I guess, one thing to know is that they seem to be going towards a younger Alan Scott than I personally would have guessed. But that's just my guess. Speaking of things being cast younger than you would expect, here we go. The Sonyverse casting news was a big one this week because Aaron Taylor Johnson, formerly Quicksilver of Age of Ultron, has been cast as Kraven the Hunter. Get this, in a standalone movie. You've probably heard about this anyway by now. The movie, I don't know if this is a running title or if it's going to be the official thing. Kraven the Hunter, coming January 2023. So let's go through this here. My first reaction on this was generally positive because I think he's got the right head shape. I think he can pull off the facial hair. He's obviously super young, which is not what I would at all expect for Kraven. But we know he's a fairly decent actor. Actually, he's a very good actor. I've seen him in a number of things. I always forget that he was in, because he's not one of those actors who plays himself. So, that's good. That's a good thing. So generally, my initial reaction to this was like, okay, that's probably fine. Whatever. But then you kind of start thinking about it. First of all, we don't know if this is going to feature Peter Parker. We can guess it probably won't because this is a Sony movie, not a Disney movie. Which means that it's not going to be connected to the MCU. Which is kind of, if there's no Peter Parker in the Kraven movie, why? And one other thing to note is apparently he is signed on for multiple movies. So it's possible that we will see him before his Kraven the Hunter movie, in which case, if we see him in Spider-Man 3, hell yeah, man, I'm fine with that. Otherwise, I don't even know. Morbius? I don't know. Morbius is supposed to be done and waiting to be put out, I think. I don't know. So then there's the other side of it after I came home and I talked to my husband, which I have to, talk about this side as well because I completely understand feeling this way and I kind of do as well now. My husband, one of the first... the first Spider-Man, I believe, was the first Spider-Man comic arc that he ever read was the Kraven the Hunter arc when he was a very small child. Obviously was a very dark thing to be reading at a young age. But okay, but it's, life, it happens. So he, most people who are familiar with the character of Kraven are probably, I don't know if he's a lot of people's favorite, but he's no Dolores Umbridge. He's not a villain who people will read and be like, God damn it, I wish he would just die already. He is the worst. He is making everything about this just terrible, and he is just awful, and I want him to die. That is not Kraven. Kraven is more like your Lokis, who are more like, and your Carnages, who are more like the villains who you love to see pop up and screw things up. So the general, as far as I know, the general comic reading population has that kind of feeling about him. I'm honestly not sure what people's reactions to this casting were. I didn't honestly look at many reactions, beyond the whole, oh, it's Aaron Taylor Johnson, he's already been in Marvel stuff, that kind of very obvious face value stuff. So anyway, so that is what Kraven the Hunter kind of means to us in this house, I guess you would say, is that my husband has that very deep connection of that being one of the first comic book villains he ever read and the first Spider-Man villain in period that he ever read, from his dad's comic book collection, which is a whole, long story about as well, and it's very, heartfelt and everything. So So his thoughts on Kraven is that this is a terrible casting. Kraven is supposed to be, in his eyes, something like, 6'4" or something like that. And definitely very much older and grizzled. His perfect Kraven casting, in his opinion, would be Joe Manganiello. And if they couldn't get him, if they wanted to do an even older one, and this would be perfect in my personal opinion, Javier Bardem. Imagine a Javier Bardem Kraven. Now, he's a bit shorter. Joe Manganiello is more of that 6'4" height. I'm pretty sure he is something like that. And he, no doubt, would be able to fill his musculature out to look less built in a gym and more built in nature. I'm sure he'd be able to do that. Bardem is already a very large man. I'm sure he'd be able to bulk up as well. But, of course, that's all just talk because we have a Kraven now, and it's Aaron Taylor Johnson. So, very, very mixed bag of feelings about that. Part of me really wants to know, were they testing him, or obviously they weren't testing him for as Quicksilver, but is that part of why they cast him as Kraven, is because they had him as Quicksilver? And that also brings up another thing: is have they reached the bottom of the barrel of solid acting or actors if they are recasting Marvel actors? They can't find anybody else who's good enough, so they're just reusing ones they've already done. Finally, for the announced things that have come out this week, there was an MCU TV announcement that was pretty exciting for a lot of people, myself included, and that is that Okoye will be starring in a Origin TV series spin-off. Potentially, if you recall, there was a Wakanda TV show they announced coming earlier this year. It's potentially that TV show, or there could be an entirely different Okoye series alongside the Wakanda show. I'm not really sure. My guess is that it's going to be the same one that we've already heard about. They're potentially just trying to nail down a plot, and after, it was Oye who we saw in Falcon and the Winter Soldier. But if Okoye is showing up, I have no doubt that Oye would show up as well for that TV show. So that's at this point, it sounds like she's going to be starring in that, and it will be mostly about her and her origin. However, it could end up kind of changing as time goes on, and it's going to end up being potentially more like a show that centers around the Dora Milaje, at which she leads, of course, which would make sense why they would announce her first as being part of the show. So that could be what that all ends up being, and it's probably going to end up it's hard to say right now if it would come out before or after the second Black Panther movie, which is of course going to be called Wakanda Forever. Bring tissues, guys, to that movie. Just saying. I can't tell right now if it's going to come out before or after that, but we haven't had any misses. Let's be honest, we have not had any misses with the MCU TV, or let's be honest, with the movies either. I know people have movies that they don't like as much as others. I certainly do as well. But as far as, critically acclaimedness goes, they just do successes. So I don't think this is not something that's like, oh, they're doing too much. There's nothing like that. I only expect good things from them at this point. I pretty much trust Disney Marvel for doing what's best. Wrapping things up here, I actually have two little rumors that we're going to talk about that are both Disney Marvel related, and potentially me not having faith in Disney Marvel. So I'm going to backtrack what I just said a second ago about having faith in Disney Marvel right away. So the first rumor was one that's been around, it's kind of been putzing around for a while, but it's getting a lot of strength behind it because more and more, I'm not going to say sources because that's not what they are, more and more news outlets are reporting the rumor. And reporting that they themselves have heard the rumor confirmed. So while that means literally nothing with if this is actually going to happen, it may be worth mentioning if it ends up being something real. So the rumor is that for the third Spider-Man movie, No Way Home, it is rumored that Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin will be the main villain with the Sinister Six he's going to pull together from multiple universes. This is obviously, if you can't tell from my tone of voice, I think it's a really stupid idea. I don't see how that would be at all something that would work in the MCU that we have right now. Yeah, that's pretty much all I gotta say about that. The only other thing, really, I guess, is that if they do pull Sinister Six from multiple universes, that would be the one thing I think would be really cool. I don't know about pulling from universes we've already seen, like the Raimi-verse, specifically. I don't know how well that would work. I don't know. Oh, speaking of this, I was not planning on talking about this, but I just remembered there was a apparent photo leak of it was, let's see, I believe it was the Amazing Spider-Man and Peter Parker, a pizza delivery boy, or Peter Parker, a reporter, or something like that, which was supposed to be the two Spider-Men who, were from the Raimi series and the Amazing Spider-Man two movies. Some pictures of some pops of their characters popped up on some foreign, from my perspective, website. I don't really want them to be in this movie. I'm over it. Is that just me? I'm over it. I'm over movies that came out like over a decade ago. I've moved on, and I kind of want new material. So that's where I stand with that. But, like I said, just, 5 minutes ago or whatever, they have yet to be wrong about this stuff, so I could be eating my foot come December. Not literally, because I'm not a heathen. Actually, heathen isn't anything bad, it's just a religion, but yeah. Finally, to wrap it up, we have the second MCU rumor, which is the second of two rumors that we have to finish up the podcast. And that is surrounding Captain America 4. There is a rumor that Cynthia Schmidt, aka Sin, Red Skull's daughter, will be the villain of Captain America 4. To which I go, ha! Because you may have heard me bitching about this while Falcon and the Winter Soldier was premiering, but there were a lot of reasons to believe that the character of Carly was pulled, especially with her physical features, the red hair and the freckles. Those are two of Sin's major, very obvious features on physical characteristics, recognizably, right? And that was what they put on Carly. So for obvious reasons, it kind of felt like... And Carly herself isn't even a character from the comics. She is a female version of a male character, and at that, she's kind of a very loose female version of that male character. Extremely loose, I would say. So with all of that, it kind of makes it very clear to me that the character of Carly in Falcon and the Winter Soldier was very much inspired by both Carl from the comics as well as Sin. And now they're pulling Sin in to the Captain America 4? She's gonna look just like Carl. I mean, she's obviously a white woman with straight hair, but cause she's, Red Skull's daughter, is not gonna be anything but that. This is not a problem, as long as they handle it correctly and they don't at all make her anything like Carly, because that would be the worst. Just the worst. And it's good for me because I already have her first appearance. I picked it up back when we first saw Carly, and I assumed that it was Sin based on her red hair and freckles. I believe Sin dated Crossbones? I believe that is what it is. When she appears as another character first, and then she appears as Sin. And at that point, I believe she's dating Crossbones, and they just go around killing people, because they have fun with that kind of thing. So she's a really out there character. And at one point, I have to find this issue because I have no doubt if she's going to be popping up in that movie, this is going to happen. Especially with Yelena Belova coming in as the new Black Widow, which is basically what we know already without that movie even having come out. What happens with Sin is she ends up losing her face like her father, I believe it is an accident with acid involving Yelena Belova throwing acid on her, or possibly scarring up her face in a way that she is able to basically scrape the skin off her face, and it leaves her with the Red Skull face, just like traditional Red Skull, her father. So that's something that's interesting and morbid about her character, and I gotta look up. I have looked at my local shop what issue that is, and I don't recall. I need to go back and look a little more deeply because they have a lot of stuff in their long boxes. And I would really love to get that issue before people kind of catch on. People haven't really even caught on to this rumor yet, so that's kind of good if you're looking for her issues, because they're still vaguely affordable. However, that being said, I did look on eBay. There are not many of them, period. So get them while you can, and probably don't go to eBay. Try local comic shops first, because eBay doesn't really have many options, and the one option I saw was like $30. It was ridiculous. And that wraps up this episode of Sensational She-Geek live from Yancey Street. Thank you so much for listening this far, and if you've made it this far, again, I apologize for this episode being a lot later than I intended, than I ever really intend. So thank you for sticking around and waiting for that to finally come out. The next episode, this is a kind of important note, will actually be coming out on Tuesday instead of Monday. That will be Tuesday, June 1st. Monday is a holiday. That's not the only reason why I'm pushing it back till Tuesday. It's also because I am going to be recording on Tuesday as well a special edition podcast episode, about Sailor Moon in preparation for the Sailor Moon Eternal movies, 2 movies, which will drop on Netflix on Thursday the 3rd. And I will probably be talking about them next Friday, because that's, I'll talk about why I like Sailor Moon, the kind of comparisons between, because at this point I've consumed all the Sailor Moon besides the older movies. There's the original show, there's the Crystal show, and the manga, and I'm almost finished with the manga, so at that point I will have consumed all of the, English available versions of the Sailor Moon properties, and so I'm very familiar with it. I'll be able to explain my personal history with it, what is to be expected based on the dream arc they're going to be pulling from the manga, which has got, honestly, not even gonna lie, some really cool stuff. And it'll be something that's hopefully fun to listen to, so just as much as it is fun. So we will hopefully see you then, or hear you, or you will hopefully hear me then. And thank you again for listening. You can find me online. My website is sensationalshegeek.weebly.com. I know I mentioned Madeline Pryor earlier in the episode. She was the first character who I completed a full comic book reading list for, with all of the commentary for the what happens in each episode, each issue that she is there for. So if you're curious about her, theoretically before Inferno comes out this fall, I do have her entire character history written out there. I am what you would call the Madeline Pryor Pro. Excuse me. I'm also a Clea Pro, so if those characters interest you, hit me up, because I know it all, literally. I've read their histories front to back more than once. So that's my website. You can also find me on Instagram. My username is Anna with the Comics, because what I post is comics and sometimes my cat, and very occasionally very messy art. But mostly just comics. And then you can find me on Twitter. My username is Savage She-Geek, because Sensational was too many letters. Thank you again for listening, and as I said, I will be back Tuesday, June 1st for episode 20A. We're getting upward towards 50 episodes. That's very exciting for me, for no other particular reason than that is a accomplishment to have under my belt. So thank you for listening for whatever amount of time that you have been able to do so. I hope that you come back for more episodes in the future, and whether or not you do that, I hope you have an excellent weekend here, whether you have a holiday for it or not. And be nice to people, be nice to yourself, give yourself credit where credit is due, and get sweaty about the things that you love.